The city never sleeps, and neither do its secrets. Behind the glow of penthouses and high-rise offices, behind every champagne toast and whispered conversation in dimly lit lounges, there's a story waiting to unravel. And tonight, we're stepping into one that has it all: love, deception, ambition, and the cold reality of betrayal. Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Now, grab your drink, get comfortable, because this is the story of Nathan Carter, a man who had it all, or so he thought. What happens when trust is shattered, when love turns into deception, and loyalty is just a facade? This cheating story unfolds in a world of power, ambition, and deep-seated secrets, where an emotional affair threatens to destroy everything. As the layers of marriage betrayal unravel, emotions run high, and relationship drama takes center stage. Nathan Carter had it all: success, and his past choices led him down a dangerous path of infidelity, story, and marriage struggles. As relationship conflict intensifies, and the lines between love and deception blur, Nathan is forced to confront the painful truth: was it ever real, or just an illusion? An affair drama that many face in silence. With emotional infidelity pushing relationships to the brink, the question remains: can a love tainted by secrets survive? Watch as tensions explode, emotions unravel, and the painful road to healing after betrayal begins. Will the cracks in their foundation lead to a marriage breakdown, or is there still a chance for relationship repair? In a world of cheating scandals, relationship trust issues, betrayal, and forgiveness, the choice between revenge and redemption is never simple. Let me tell you a story. New York City, 2022. The kind of place where fortunes are made overnight and reputations crumble just as fast. Nathan Carter stood at the top of it all, or at least, that's what everyone believed. At 39, he was the youngest managing partner at Hartwell & Briggs, one of Manhattan's most prestigious investment firms. Sharp-minded, calculated, and ambitious, summer retreats in the Hamptons, and a love story that, at least from the outside, seemed flawless. But if you looked closely, you'd see the cracks. Sophia was the newest executive consultant at Hartwell & Briggs, hired to modernize the firm's branding. A 32-year-old powerhouse with a reputation for turning struggling brands into industry icons, she had confidence that filled a room. And let's not sugarcoat it, she was stunning. Dark auburn hair, sharp green eyes that missed nothing, and a way of carrying herself that made people want to listen. But it wasn't just her looks that got Nathan's attention. It was the way she understood the game. She spoke the language of power, ambition, and the kind of ruthless determination that had once fueled him. Their interactions were professional at first. Meetings discussing corporate rebranding turned into longer conversations over coffee, then whiskey. Late nights at the office became their routine, their discussions drifting beyond work, into childhood memories, into things Nathan hadn't talked about in years. She made him laugh. Really laugh. Not the empty chuckle he'd perfected for boardrooms and fundraisers. Maybe that's why he ignored the warning signs. Like the way her touch lingered a second too long when she handed him a file, or how she looked at him when she thought no one else was watching. Maybe he ignored them because deep down, he wanted to. It was a Thursday night, close to midnight. The office was quiet except for the hum of the city outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. Nathan was finishing up emails when Sophia appeared at his door. Nathan raised an eyebrow. That bad? She sighed, swirling the ice in her drink. Let's just say, I wasn't expecting to have to prove myself this much. He knew what she meant. The firm was ruthless, and as a woman in an industry dominated by men who had inherited their wealth, she had to work twice as hard to be taken seriously. You'll prove them wrong, he said. You're too damn good not to. For a second, she just looked at him. Then, in a voice softer than usual, she said, Sometimes, I feel like you're the only one who sees that. He shouldn't have let it happen. But when she reached across the desk, her fingers brushing his, he didn't pull away. And when she leaned in, he met her halfway. It wasn't love, not at first. Then secret weekends when Claire was away on charity trips. It was reckless, yes, but for the first time in years, Nathan felt alive. At home, Claire barely noticed. If she had suspicions, she didn't voice them. She was too busy curating their perfect life, planning fundraisers, and socializing with people who mattered. Maybe she didn't want to know. But secrets don't stay secrets forever. The first Real slip came on a Sunday afternoon. He'd spent the morning tangled up in a hotel bed with Sophia. When he got home, Claire was waiting. She was dressed for brunch, silk blouse, diamond earrings, the scent of her expensive perfume lingering in the air. But her expression was unreadable. "You're late," she said. "Sorry. Work ran over." The lie rolled off his tongue effortlessly. The real moment of reckoning came weeks later. It was supposed to be another night like any other. Dinner at a client's estate, small talk, perfectly polished smiles. But something was different. Claire was distant. Not cold, not angry, just detached. And then, halfway through the evening, she excused herself. Nathan didn't think much of it, until his phone buzzed. "Check your email." The message was from an anonymous sender. His stomach tightened. He opened his inbox, and there it was, an attachment. Photos, emails, a reservation at a hotel he had never told anyone about. And then, the final nail in the coffin, a text. "Nice try covering your tracks. Next time, be smarter." His pulse pounded. He scanned the room, looking for Claire, for anyone who might be watching. She was nowhere in sight. And just like that, the facade came crashing down. Someone knew. And they weren't just watching. They were waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Nathan's first instinct was to look for Claire. He scanned the dimly lit ballroom. Chandeliers casting soft golden light over Manhattan's elite. The air thick with laughter and the clinking of crystal glasses. She was nowhere to be found. But Sophia. She stood across the room, deep in conversation with a venture capitalist from London. Her red dress hugged her figure, her hair cascading over one shoulder as she laughed at something he said. She had no idea. And for the first time since this affair started, Nathan felt something foreign creeping in. Not guilt, not regret, fear. Who had sent the message? He needed answers. Now, slipping out of the ballroom, he made his way to the terrace. The city spread out before him, lights stretching endlessly into the night. He dialed a number he never thought he'd need to call. "Carter, what's the problem? I need to know who's watching me." Ethan chuckled. "Paranoid, are we?" Nathan's grip on his phone tightened. "I'm serious. Someone has information on me. Private information. I need to know who they are and what they want." Pause. "Send me what you have. I'll get back to you." Nathan ended the call and exhaled. His mind was already spinning through the possibilities. A jealous colleague, a blackmail attempt, or his blood ran cold. Claire. Had she found out? Was this her way of silently letting him know that the walls were closing in? The thought made his stomach turn. He had underestimated her before. He wouldn't make that mistake again. Nathan didn't go home that night. Instead, he booked a room at a hotel downtown, neutral ground, looking every bit the composed wife of a high-powered executive. But her eyes, those told a different story. Nathan closed the door behind him, heart pounding. "Morning," she said, setting down her cup. "You're late." He swallowed. "I had work." A slow nod. "Right. Work." She stood, walked toward him, and for a second, just a second, he thought she might kiss him. Instead, Claire's expression turned to something almost amused. "Because I was waiting." "For what?" Her eyes locked onto his. "For you to dig your own grave." And just like that, he knew. This wasn't just a revelation. It was an execution. Nathan sat on the couch, rubbing a hand down his face. "All right, what now?" Claire took her time crossing the room, refilling her coffee, savoring his discomfort. "Now," she glanced at him. "Now, you decide how painful this is going to be for you." His head snapped up. "I'm not making this easy for you, Nathan. And make sure Sophia Reed's name is dragged through the mud right alongside yours." Nathan's stomach tightened. But Claire sipped her coffee. voice almost playful. That's messy. And I'm not a messy person. He swallowed. Then what do you want? She smiled. Oh, I don't want much. Just everything. Silence. And then, excuse me? Claire sighed, as if she were speaking to a slow student. You will sign over half of your assets to me. You will not contest the divorce. And you will make sure I come out of this looking like the devoted, wronged wife. His fingers curled into fists. You're asking me to hand over my life. Claire leaned in, voice deadly soft. I'm telling you to. He didn't respond. Couldn't. Because he knew she had won. Nathan didn't see Sophia for days. He ignored her calls, her messages. He spent every waking moment with lawyers, financial advisors, trying to find a way out that didn't leave him completely powerless. But deep down, he knew. He was trapped. When he finally saw Sophia again, she wasn't happy. She cornered him in his office, arms crossed. Are you going to tell me what the hell is going on? Nathan exhaled. Claire knows. Sophia's face paled. What? She knows. And she's playing the long game. For the first time since he'd met her, Sophia looked afraid. What does she want? Everything. A heavy silence settled between them. Then, Sophia shook her head. We can fix this. Nathan let out a humorless laugh. No, I can survive this. You were never a factor in her game. She flinched. Nathan, he cut her off. You should leave. If you stay, you'll be collateral damage. Her eyes searched his, looking for something, anything that proved this wasn't what it sounded like. But there was nothing left to say. Sophia took a step back. Then another. And when she finally turned and walked out the door, Nathan didn't stop her. Because deep down, he knew. This wasn't just an affair that had gone wrong. The cracks in Nathan's empire had been small at first. A lost account here, a slight demotion there. But soon it snowballed. And by the time Nathan realized what was happening, it was too late. He had lost Claire. He had lost Sophia. And now, he was about to lose everything else. Nathan Carter had spent his entire life mastering the art of control. Every deal, every decision calculated. But standing in the ruins of his perfectly constructed world, he was finally realizing the truth. He wasn't in control anymore. After the divorce, the whispers at Hartwell and Briggs became louder. Nathan wasn't just a cautionary tale, he was a liability. First, cornered him in the firm's lounge one afternoon. The partners are making moves. You need to be ready. Nathan clenched his jaw. I built this firm. Harrington sighed. And now you're the weak link. Nathan walked into an emergency board meeting. He had prepared for a fight. What he hadn't prepared for was betrayal. Effective immediately, the chairman, Leonard Briggs, announced, Nathan Carter is stepping down as managing partner. The words hit like a freight train. This is a joke. Nathan's voice was cold. You're forcing me out? It's a vote, Carter. Briggs' expression was unreadable. And we all know how that's going to go. Nathan looked around the room. Harrington wouldn't meet, he had been outplayed. Slowly, Nathan leaned back, exhaling sharply. And if I don't step down? Briggs smiled. Then we release the internal audit. Nathan went still. The audit. The one that outlined all the high-risk investments Nathan had pushed through over the years. Nothing illegal, but enough to paint him as reckless. A gambler. A liability. This was a coup. A carefully from Wall Street king to cautionary tale, Nathan Carter's fall from grace. Betrayal, greed, and the price of ambition, how a powerful man lost everything. His name was everywhere. And so was Claire. She played the role of the wronged ex-wife flawlessly. Tearful interviews, heartfelt social media posts, carefully curated photos of her and their loyal friends. She had done what no one had ever managed before. She had turned Nathan Carter into a pariah. He didn't hear from Sophia at first. Not until 2 weeks after his public execution, when she showed up at his apartment. Nathan hadn't expected visitors. Not in his new, much smaller place, far from the penthouse he once called home. But there she was, standing at his door, eyes dark with something between anger and desperation. You're just going to let them destroy you? Nathan leaned against the frame, exhausted. They already have. Sophia pushed past him, storming inside. No, she snapped. You let them. Nathan shut the door, rubbing a hand down his face. What do you want, Sophia? She turned, hands clenched. You told me to leave. You told me to walk away. And I did. Her voice cracked, just slightly. And what did it change, Nathan? His stomach twisted. Nothing, she continued, stepping closer. They still came for you. Claire still won. You still lost everything. Nathan exhaled slowly. Yeah. I did. Sophia studied him, waiting. And you're just going to accept it? Silence. And then, no. Nathan wasn't a man who craved revenge. He wasn't a man who played games just to win. But this wasn't just about revenge. This was about taking back his power. And he knew exactly where to start. Publicly, Claire was thriving. Privately, the cracks were starting to show. Nathan still had sources. And those sources told him everything. She was bleeding money. Fast. The settlements, the lifestyle, it was all adding up. And without his financial empire to keep her afloat, she was drowning. Nathan smirked. And that was the opening he needed. He reached out to his old connections. The ones who still owed him favors. The ones who weren't afraid to play dirty. Nathan Carter had spent the last decade playing the game. He knew the rules, understood the power dynamics. And for the longest time, he thought he was untouchable. But now, he was the man on the outside. And if he was going to claw his way back, he had to stop playing by the rules. It was time to rewrite the game. For weeks, Nathan had been gathering information. Quietly, carefully. Watching. Listening. Waiting. Hartwell and Briggs thought they had him beaten. Claire thought she had won. But they had made one fatal mistake. They had underestimated how dangerous a man with nothing left to lose could be. Nathan knew exactly where to strike first. Through a web of carefully placed calls and financial maneuvers, Nathan triggered a chain reaction that would shake Claire's entire world. It started with small, unnoticeable things. An anonymous tip to a journalist about discrepancies in Claire's finances. A random audit from the IRS. A leak about the true nature of her marriage. Emails, messages, carefully placed photographs. First, Claire ignored it. Then she tried to fight it. But by the time she realized what was happening, it was too late. Her name was splashed across every tabloid. But what they didn't know was that Nathan had never left empty-handed. Before he walked out of that boardroom, he made sure to take something with him, every single damning piece of evidence he could find. Briggs and the partners had made shady deals for years. They had manipulated numbers, hidden losses. They mysteriously landed on the desk of a financial crimes investigator. The headlines came fast. Wall Street scandal: Hartwell and Briggs under investigation for financial fraud. And Hartwell and Briggs? Their stock plummeted overnight. They had wanted him gone. Stepping into his new apartment, Nathan looked at her, expression unreadable. What if I am? Sophia let out a breath. You're playing a dangerous game. He smirked. I always was. For a moment, she met his gaze. You're not the only one with something to prove. Nathan studied her, then nodded. You stay? I stay. Nathan had his allies. He had the information. And now, he was ready for the final strike. Everything led to this moment. Claire still had power. She still had money. But she was bleeding. And Nathan? He was about to make her drown. Step 1, he made sure her financial collapse was irreversible. The accounts she had hidden, frozen. The lawyers she had used against him, suddenly unavailable. Her most powerful allies, distancing themselves. By the time she realized what was happening, she was alone. Step 2, he made sure her social empire burned. I think it makes us even. She was shaking now, her hands curled into fists. You were never meant to survive this, she whispered. Nathan let out a slow breath. And yet, here we are. Claire stepped forward, voice trembling. I can fix this. We can fix this. Nathan just laughed. You don't get it, do you? He stood, towering over her. She turned to leave, but before she stepped out, Nathan said the words that sealed her fate. Enjoy the fall, Claire. She never looked back. Hartwell and Briggs. Collapsed. Claire. Ruined. Nathan Carter? He had everything back. And more. But for the first time, revenge wasn't enough. Because amidst all the power plays and chaos, he had realized something. No one was going to take it from him. And there it is, the ultimate climax, revenge and redemption. Nathan Carter lost everything but fought his way back, proving that some men aren't meant to stay buried. Nathan Carter had played the long game. He had lost everything, his wife, his reputation, his career. But now he had taken it all back. Hartwell and Briggs was dead. Claire was finished. And Nathan was just getting started. But the truth about revenge is this, it never really ends. And just when Nathan thought he had won, he was about to face his greatest threat yet. Started with a phone call. Nathan was in his office, finalizing a deal that would cement his company as the dominant force in Manhattan. Then his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. He expected anger, desperation, manipulation. But not this. Claire's hands trembled slightly. I spent years thinking power was everything. That winning was everything. She exhaled. But now I realized that I had everything before I lost you. Nathan's jaw clenched. You don't get to do this. She looked up. Do what? Pushing off the wall. You always were a good actress. Then she pulled out a photo. And everything changed. Because in that photo was a dead man. Or rather, a man who should have been dead. Leonard Briggs, the former chairman of Hartwell and Briggs. The man Nathan had ruined. The man who had disappeared after the scandal broke. Nathan felt his blood turn to ice. He's back? Claire nodded. And he wants revenge. Nathan inhaled slowly. Let me guess, he's coming for me too? Claire hesitated. Then no. He already came for you. Nathan's entire body tensed. What? Claire slid a folder across the table. Inside, every dirty move Briggs had made. He had been working in the shadows, pulling strings, making alliances. And now, Briggs had a plan. A plan to destroy Nathan completely. The final battle. Nathan moved quickly. He reached out to every contact he had left. The city whispered of Briggs' return, but no one knew how deep his influence ran. Then, one night, Nathan received a message. A single sentence. Time's up. And the next morning, Carter and Reed Consulting was gone. Nathan stared. Then, she pulled out a photo. And everything changed. Because in that photo was a dead man. Or rather, a man who should have been dead. Leonard Briggs. Claire nodded. And he wants revenge. Nathan inhaled slowly. Let me guess, he's coming for me too? Claire hesitated. Then no. He already came for you. Nathan's entire body tensed. What? Claire slid a folder across the table. Inside, every dirty move Briggs had made. He had been working in the shadows, pulling strings, making alliances. And now, Briggs had a plan. A plan to destroy Nathan completely. The final battle. Nathan moved quickly. He reached out to every contact he had left. The city whispered of Briggs' return, but no one knew how deep his influence ran. Then, one night, Nathan received a message. A single sentence. Time's up. And the next morning, Carter and Reed, the air thick with tension. Inside, Briggs was waiting, a glass of whiskey in hand. A slow, dangerous smile on his face. Nathan stepped forward. This ends tonight. Briggs smirked. It does. It didn't feel like victory. Months later, Nathan sat in a quiet cafe, sipping coffee. Sophia slid into the seat across from him. It's over, she said. Nathan nodded. Yeah. A beat of silence. Then Sophia smiled. We could leave all of this behind. Nathan smirked. Could we? Sophia leaned in. Yes. Because for once in your life, Nathan Carter, you don't have to fight anymore. Nathan looked at her. Then, he nodded. Because she was right. The war was over. And for the first time, Nathan Carter was finally free. And there it is, the final showdown, the last betrayal. What happens after the war is over? What happens when the only thing keeping you alive is the fight itself? For the first time in years, Nathan Carter had won. But victory? Nathan had left Manhattan. For months, he had disappeared, vanishing into the quiet solitude of Europe, the Caribbean, anywhere but here. Sophia had stayed, running the company in his absence. She had built it into something even stronger than before. And yet, Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that something was still unfinished. Then, one morning, it was Claire. Nathan exhaled. "What do you want?" A pause. Then, "I need to see you." Nathan laughed. "Yeah, not happening." "Nathan." Her voice was lower now. "Urgent. You need to come back. It's about Sophia." The laughter died on his lips. And just like that, Nathan Carter was back in the game. When he landed in New York, the city was exactly as he left it. Fast, ruthless, unforgiving. But something was wrong. His company, the empire he had rebuilt, was under attack. Not from Briggs, not from Claire, but from someone new. He met Claire in a private suite at the Grand Meridian, the same hotel where so much of his past life had unraveled. Claire looked the same, but different, tired, weary. Nathan laughed bitterly. "You were working with Briggs. You were never on my side." Sophia leaned forward. "You're wrong." Nathan scoffed. "Am I?" Sophia held his gaze. "I wasn't working for Briggs," she said softly. "I was using him." Nathan froze. Sophia stood, walking around the desk. "Nathan, I never wanted to destroy you. I wanted to build something with you. You were always so obsessed with revenge. With war. With winning." She looked him in the eye. "I had to protect myself." Nathan exhaled, his mind racing. "You played both sides." Sophia nodded. "Because I knew eventually you'd come after me, too." And that was the moment Nathan realized. She wasn't wrong. Nathan had spent his life trusting no one. And in the end, staring at the city. Sophia had left. Claire had disappeared. And him? He was free. Or at least, as free as a man like him could ever be. His phone buzzed. A message. No sender. No name. Just a single line. "See you soon." Nathan smirked. Because in this city, the game never really ends. Nathan Carter had built an empire. He had watched it burn to the ground. And then, against all odds, he had rebuilt himself from the ashes. But the truth about power? It's never secure. There's always someone waiting in the shadows. And tonight, Nathan Carter was about to learn that the game was far from over. It started with a car bomb. Nathan had just stepped out of his black Mercedes when his driver, Logan, called out, "Sir." Then, the explosion. A deafening roar. A wave of heat. Shattering glass raining down onto the street. Nathan was thrown backward. His ears ringing, vision blurred. People screamed. Horns blared. And as Nathan sat up, staring at the flaming wreckage that had been his car just seconds ago, a single thought cut through the chaos. Someone wanted him dead. Nathan didn't go to the police. He didn't need to. He already knew what this was. A message. A declaration of war. And there was only one person ruthless enough to pull a stunt like this. Sophia. Or so he thought. Until he got the second message. It was delivered to his penthouse, no return address, no fingerprints. Just a black envelope with a single playing card inside. The King of Spades. Nathan exhaled slowly, because he knew what that meant. This wasn't Sophia. This was something worse. The man in the shadows. Nathan had spent years dealing with the elite of Manhattan. COs. Sophia met his gaze. "I didn't do this, Nathan." He exhaled. "Then why are you here?" A beat of silence. "Then because you're running out of time." Nathan's jaw clenched. "And Sophia?" She stepped even closer. "The King of Spades isn't just after you, Nathan." She hesitated. "He's after both of us." Nathan and Sophia sat in a dimly lit study, the weight of unspoken history hanging between them. "Start talking," Nathan said. Sophia exhaled, rubbing her temples. "The King of Spades isn't just a hitman. He's a fixer." Nathan frowned. "For who?" Sophia looked up, her eyes filled with something close to fear. "For the people we screwed over." Nathan went still. Sophia continued. "You think we destroyed Briggs? You think Claire just faded into the background?" She shook her head. They weren't the only ones we pissed off, Nathan. Nathan's pulse quickened. Who hired him? Sophia swallowed. I don't know. And that was the worst answer of all. Nathan had survived backstabbings, betrayals, and corporate wars. But this? No more waiting for the King of Spades to make his move. It was time to flush him out. He staged a public return, a bait. A high-profile event at the Ritz, packed with Manhattan's most powerful figures. Nathan knew the King of Spades wouldn't be able to resist. And he was right. The gala was in full swing when Nathan saw him. A man in a black suit, standing near the bar. Calm, silent, watching. Nathan turned to Sophia. He's here. Sophia's grip on her champagne glass tightened. Are you sure? Nathan's eyes never left the man. Positive. And then, the man smiled. A slow, knowing smile. Nathan's stomach dropped. Because he had been played. The King of Spades hadn't come alone. From the corners of the room, men in suits closed in. Armed. Trained. Waiting for the kill order. And Nathan? Nathan had nowhere to run. The room went silent. Then the King of Spades stepped forward. Nathan Carter. His voice was smooth, controlled. You've been a busy man. Nathan didn't flinch. And you've been a coward, hiding in the shadows. The King of Spades smirked. Not hiding. Watching. He tilted his head. You thought this was a war. He stepped closer. But this? A pause. This is an execution. Nathan's pulse pounded. This was it. Then, gunfire. Chaos erupted. Nathan moved fast, grabbing Sophia and flipping a table for cover. The King of Spades men fired, but Nathan's security team, the ones he had planted in secret, fired back. The room exploded into a full-blown shootout. Glass shattered. Guests screamed, running for cover. And Nathan went straight for the King of Spades. They clashed in the middle of the chaos. Fists, knives, a brutal, bloody fight. Nathan fought like a man who had nothing left to lose. And finally, after minutes that felt like hours, the King of Spades stumbled. Nathan grabbed the gun from the floor, aimed it, and pulled the trigger. One shot. Two. The King of Spades fell. Dead. Nathan exhaled. Then silence. The war was over. Finally. Hours later, Nathan stood on the rooftop of his penthouse, staring at the city. Sophia joined him. It's done, she said. Nathan nodded. Yeah. A pause. Then Sophia smirked. So, what now? Nathan exhaled. Then slowly he smiled. Now, we rebuild. And just like that, the game began again. Nathan Carter had won the war. The King of Spades was dead. The men who had come for him were either buried or running for their lives. And yet, it didn't feel like victory. Because the thing about power, it never really settles. It shifts. It moves. And when one empire falls, another one rises. Nathan knew this. He had built his empire from the ruins of his past. But what he didn't know was that the real threat had been lurking in the shadows this entire time. And now, it was coming for him. 2 weeks after the shootout at the Ritz, Nathan had expected many things. Another crime syndicate, a former rival from Wall Street, even Claire making a last-ditch attempt at revenge. But this was different. Because the name Marcus had whispered, it belonged to someone Nathan had once trusted. Someone who had been there from the very beginning. Glenn Wynn, Nathan's most loyal employee, his friend. The man who had helped him rise from the ashes after Claire's betrayal. Nathan's jaw tightened. You're lying. Marcus shook his head. No, I'm not. Nathan's stomach twisted. Because deep down, he knew it was true. The signs had been there, subtle, buried beneath the chaos of everything else. The missed meetings. The quiet whispers in the hallways. The way Glenn had always seemed to know too much. To find Glenn. Because this time, there would be no deals. No second chances. Only revenge. Nathan stormed into Glenn's office at midnight. The city lights cast long shadows across the room, illuminating the man who had stood by his side for years. Glenn looked up, unsurprised. I was wondering when you'd figure it out, he said. Nathan's fists curled. So it's true. Glenn sighed, leaning back in his chair. I never wanted it to come to this. Nathan exhaled sharply. Then why? Glenn's eyes darkened. Because you never really saw me, Nathan. Nathan frowned. Glenn stood. Security alarms blared. Glass rained down like shards of ice. And Nathan? Nathan moved like a man who refused to die. One by one, he took them down, mercenaries sent to erase him. Nathan was being erased. Everything he had built. Everything he had fought for. It was all being ripped away. Sophia met him in a safe house on the Lower East Side. She looked him over, bloodied, exhausted but still standing. You look like hell, she muttered. Nathan smirked. Feel like it too. Sophia sat across from him, arms crossed. Glenn has everything, Nathan. If we don't move now, you won't have anything left to fight for. Nathan leaned forward. Oh, I'm not just fighting to win anymore. His voice was low. Dangerous. I'm fighting to end this. Nathan knew Glenn was 10 steps ahead. That meant playing the game differently. No more public attacks. No more waiting. This time, Nathan was going to strike first. Step 1: find Glenn's weakness. Everyone had one. Even a man as calculated as Glenn. And Nathan? Nathan was willing to burn the city down to find it. Glenn had vanished. He had covered his tracks well, but not perfectly. Nathan's contacts ran deep, and soon he had a lead. An offshore account. A hidden transaction. And then, a name. Julian Cross. A high-stakes investment broker with ties to organized crime. And Glenn's personal money launderer. Nathan smiled. Looks like we found our leverage. Julian Cross thought he was untouchable. Sitting in his high-rise office, moving billions with the click of a button. But when Nathan walked through his door, the power shifted. Julian barely had time to react before Nathan's gun was pressed against his temple. Nathan's voice was calm. Let's talk. Julian swallowed hard. You don't want to do this. Nathan smirked. I really do. A pause. Then, Nathan slid a flash drive across the table. This is every illegal transaction you've handled for Glenn Wynne. Julian's face went pale. Marcus wasn't just another player. He was the mastermind. Everything. Claire, Briggs, Sophia, Glenn. It had all been leading to this moment. Marcus sat down, crossing his legs. I have to admit, Carter, you lasted longer than I expected. Nathan's grip tightened on his gun. Marcus smirked. But this is where it ends. Sophia stepped forward. Why? Marcus glanced at her. Because men like Nathan, they don't get to win. Nathan's breath was steady. You tried to kill me. Marcus nodded. And I'll keep trying. Then he gestured toward Glenn. And power struggles had finally reached its conclusion. And yet, victory never felt so empty. London had been a battlefield. By the time Nathan and Sophia left the private club, but at what cost? Sophia looked at him as they slipped into a waiting car. You okay? She asked. Nathan exhaled. I don't know. Because this wasn't like before. Before, when he had taken down Hartwell and Briggs. Before, when he had destroyed Claire. Before, when he had clawed his way back from nothing. This time, felt different. This time, it wasn't just about revenge. It was about putting ghosts to rest. And maybe, just maybe, finding something real. 2 weeks later, back in Manhattan, she looked at him. Something almost sad in her expression. I spent so long trying to win, she murmured. And for what? Nathan didn't answer. Because he understood. Claire had played her game. And she had lost. She sighed, swirling the liquid in her glass. What happens now? Nathan leaned back. That's up to you. A pause. Then Claire smiled. Not the calculated kind she used to wear. A real one. And for the first time in forever, Nathan realized something. He didn't hate her anymore. Maybe he never really had. Maybe they had just been two broken people, too blinded by ambition to see the truth. Claire raised her glass. To endings. Nathan smirked, clinking his against hers. To endings. And just like that, their story was over. Nathan returned to his penthouse late that night. Sophia was waiting. You saw Claire, she said. Nathan nodded. Sophia studied him. Then, do you still love her? Nathan blinked. What? Sophia exhaled, stepping closer. I need to know, Nathan. A long pause. Then, no. And he meant it. Sophia held his gaze. Then what now? Nathan let out a slow breath. We move forward. She tilted her head. Together? Nathan hesitated. Because here's the thing. He had spent so long chasing power, revenge, control. He had forgotten how to let someone in. But looking at Sophia now, maybe it was time. Nathan smirked. We'll see. Sophia rolled her eyes. Typical. Then, she kissed him. And for once, Nathan didn't fight it. The world moved on. Others weighed with the burden of consequence. Every betrayal cut deep. Every act of vengeance left scars. And yet, in the end, amidst the ruins of everything that was lost, when the weight of every decision he had ever made pressed down on him, he understood the truth. The road ahead was gone, the bridges burned, and only one path remained. The truth. But was it too late? Could redemption ever outweigh the sins of the past? That's not for me to say. That's for you to decide. Because every ending is just another beginning waiting to be written.